Good Thursday morning of the seventh week of Easter. The Acts of the Apostles now show how Paul, rejected by his fellow Jews, now turns to the Gentiles. You see, see, it's the rejection by the Jews. Paul realizes it's time to go to the Gentiles. The divine promise has been passed on now, not only to the Gentiles, but to the whole world. I'll show it to you. Wishing to determine the truth about why Paul was being accused by the Jews, the commander freed him, this is before the Romans, and ordered the chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin to convene. Then he brought Paul down and made him stand before them. Remember, he's in jail. Paul was aware that some were Sadducees and some Pharisees, so he called out before the Sanhedrin, "My brothers, I'm a Pharisee, the son of Pharisees. I'm on trial for hope in the resurrection of the dead." When he said this, a dispute broke out between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the group became divided. For the Sadducees say there is no resurrection or angels or spirits, while the Pharisees acknowledge all three. A great uproar occurred, and some scribes belonging to the Pharisee party stood up and argued sharply, "We find nothing wrong with this guy. Suppose a spirit or an angel has spoken to him." The dispute was so serious that the commander, afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by them, ordered his troops to go down and rescue Paul from their mess and take him into the compound. The following night, the Lord stood by him and said, "Take courage, for just as you have borne witness to my cause in Jerusalem, so you must also bear witness in Rome." That's when it moves from the center, the Judaic center to the global center, to Rome, you see. It's interesting. Notice what's happened here. It is the Romans. It is the Roman military that not only saved Paul, but generate the contact between Paul and the Romans. And we're now moving both by civil government and the faith and the historical moment when the leading Jews, the Pharisees and the scribes, are rejecting the gospel. Rome will embrace it. See? But it's so interesting. It is the Roman Empire that rescues Paul and in turn are Christianized by Paul and the apostles. They save him here, or he's going to get clipped. See? But by saving him, they bring him to Rome. And in bringing him to Rome, the gospel is now preached to the Romans, and they embrace it. And with that, global Christianity is formed. Becomes 3 centuries later, under Constantine, becomes the religion of Rome, and that it touches every part of the known world. The only part of the world that was not known would have been the American continent. That's still 1,000 years later, or roughly 1,000. When immigration, well, even before that, when you had the discovery of the Americas by the Vikings and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not doing well here telling you that, but it's a long ways away. But this is the beginning of the Christianization of Europe, now by the instrument of the Roman Empire. See? First by protecting the apostles and the gospel, and then by becoming it under Constantine. 313 AD, 100 years later, roughly speaking. And I think as I beat this thing to death with you every day, we're there now too. We're there too. Just I was thinking in our own country here, the freedom of speech fiercely protected by constitutional law and the courts and the state, okay, allows Christianity to be preached in every corner. With the one exception, which is interesting, the schools, the public schools. Maybe, I don't know, can religion be taught in the public schools in the sense of, at least objectively, talk about a historical phenomenon? How can you teach history, let's say European history, and not talk about Christianity? You can't. It's an impossibility. And it's not a side issue. It is the instrument of civilization. How could you talk about America and the founding fathers without talking about the Protestant ethic, the evangelization that occurred? How do you suppress that? That's not history you're doing anymore. Now it's ideology. You can't evangelize through the classroom, but you must teach the history, or you're deceiving the students of what is the cultural foundation to our Western evolution, our Western culture, especially America. How can you talk about Europe without talking about Christianity? Holy Christmas trees. What are you kidding me? That's not history any longer. Now it's ideology. It's just the truth. You don't have to buy Christianity, but you have to recognize its historical and definitive importance. You can't, even people that were atheists in the foundation of our country, they recognized the Christian gospel as at least as a wisdom. They recognized it. People like Jefferson, see? You don't have to be a Christian, but you have to recognize the Christian influence in the shaping of Western civilization is undeniable. Undeniable. And in fact, it's Judeo-Christianity. You don't have to be a Jew or a Christian to believe it, to believe in those, but you have to recognize the defining importance of Judeo-Christianity, monotheism, in the shaping of the Western civilized culture. Civilizational culture. I could honestly say the culture of the West and the conscience of the West. Violated all over the place. Slavery, all kinds of things. But still became the instrument of recognition. Who was the great leader in the 20th century of equal rights? Was Martin Luther King, a minister. A minister. He preached the gospel in such an authentic way that he converted a nation. He did. He made it impossible to be actively prejudicial against any race. You're condemned. You're condemned culturally. You're condemned even in the courts, you see. Without Martin Luther King, that would not have occurred, at least as readily as it did. And he died for it. He's the great martyr of this country, in my opinion, of the 20th century, because of his courage and his beliefs that got him killed, but he changed an entire culture. He changed the conscience of our nation. Yeah, it's the truth. I remember when he first began, holy cow, it is all very uncomfortable. But he changed the world. Changed the world. Right? There are certain leaders that have come across in history that have had such a positive effect beyond our Lord and the apostles, but others in given moments of history have impacted by their brilliance, their genius, perhaps by their blood. I think of our own founding fathers in this country. They changed the world. They created the strongest constitutional democracy in history, and it's lasted 200 years. Yeah. It's longer, 250, whatever. I'm no good at math. Isn't that neat? They took the best of the West, of the Western culture, and they brought it to fruition in the new land. We're the strongest constitutional democracy in the world and in history. No one else has been as strong as we are. I'm so grateful to be an American, to trust the Constitution and the courts. Does that mean we're innocent? By far, no. But are we law-like, constitutionally law-like? Yes. And that's our hope as a nation. And in my view, it's ultimately Judeo-Christian in its foundations of human dignity and human respect, human rights, profoundly rooted in the Christian gospel, the Judeo-Christian gospel. It goes to Judaism and its Christianization. I'm glad I'm an American. I'm glad I'm part of a world in which human rights are as fundamental as they ever have been in history. Imperfect, but fundamental. It's the hope of humanity. I really believe the American experience is a model for the world. A constitutional democracy, that we the people, governed by the people. Yeah.